Do this. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the No Fear podcast. I got a really cool guest doing some really important stuff today. His name is Craig Sawyer. And Craig, welcome to the show, obviously. Duh.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you having me on, buddy.
Yeah. Listen, like your bio, your resume is really extensive. You're doing so many different things since you've gotten out of the military. Why don't you just, for people who don't know who you are, and we'll post some stuff and links in the show notes, but why don't you just bring people up to speed, background, and then what you're doing these days?
Sure, man. Well, I left DevGru back in '99 out of the SEAL teams. I did 5 years of federal law enforcement in the Air Marshal service. And that led me onward to doing 10 years of high threat dignitary protection, running the teams that protect our different dignitaries for Department of State and other agencies that we don't talk about over in the war zones. So I did that for a decade. And then I started trying to transition home to be more with my family, raise the kids, and be closer around like my parents were. I thought that was very important. And so I started doing technical advising for different film and television projects and productions. And they kept pushing me in front of the camera. And then a South African Special Forces veteran runs a company called Aquavision. They do fantastic wildlife documentaries. And he was in LA and he called me. He said, Saw, everybody's telling me I've got to have you to head up my team to run counter-poacher operations in South Africa. I'm like, why would they tell you that? He says, I don't know. I'm calling you to find out why. And long story short, it was because I like animals, and I've got a history of standing up new teams and new operations in austere environments and conditions. And I know a lot of people, and what I don't know myself, I can figure out through helps from some of my professional colleagues. So sure enough, we stood that up. We ran some operations over there. And then I started learning about children being trafficked in the continental United States just since Trump's election, and how bad it actually is here, how pervasive. And so I founded Veterans for Child Rescue, a nonprofit organization. And I brought in a lot of my friends from the top of the FBI, CIA, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and other agencies and units, people that are just handy to have, senior officials that really know a lot and are good friends and that I trust and that are just really helpful. And man, we have built an operation, and the thrust of it, Tony, I want you to understand, it's very simple. Vets for Child Rescue is really just all about alerting the American populace to the fact that we've got child trafficking going on in the United States and how big and ugly it is. So alert the populace is number one. And we're also running operations, and we're filming it for a documentary to show people what really happens out there. It's called Contraland. It'll air, I believe, this winter now on Netflix. We're set to hit over 100 million people with it. So that's what day-to-day life is involved with for me right now, is running the operations, running the organization, standing up, building it, running a big production, and running the operations, running sting operations, and taking predators off the streets, child predators, man, pedophiles. So we're working with federal and local law enforcement, arresting these guys in batches. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Fucking insanity and amazing. Just like listening to that and thinking about that. And also, I mean, what goes through my head is, of course, from my side, I've been teaching self-defense for 40 years. And one of the things we talk about is force must parallel danger, when there is like the threat of that physical moment there. And what flashed through my head, because I can't think of anything, is like, every physical crime is heinous, like rape, abduction, tort, like all this stuff. But I can't even contemplate what's going through a kid's mind when this starts to happen to them. And so like, here's a question. I don't know if you ever been asked this online, but how do you go about, and this is just where my head went. I'm just like improvising right here because my brain is just reeling thinking about this, is if I caught a guy and I knew what he was doing, because you're obviously finding other evidence, whether there's, you know, videos of shit, and you could see the physical, the look in kids' eyes. How do you not just fucking kill these guys?
Well, I think the real answer, Tony, when you get to the practical application of this, is, man, I'm there with federal and local law enforcement officials. I've got a whole SWAT team in the house with me. My team as well of decorated special operators, a district attorney who's going to handle the prosecution. There's a big team. Sometimes there's highway patrol on the perimeter. We've got surveillance out. We've got K9 units. So there are a lot of people vested in letting the system handle it. And really, in my head, yeah, it's upsetting, man. It is. I'm human, man, and I don't have any sense of humor about people that violate the peace,
Right.
harm the
I guess,
it's
let me interject. Sorry, because you know, when you describe that, like, I'm sitting here going, like, what an idiot that guy Blauer is. I can't believe he. It's not like you were alone with this guy and you know, pulled back a curtain and went, what the fuck, you know, like there's you know, there's so much planning and that when it happens, it's like chess. It's like, you know, it's checkmate, dude. You're done. And so there is, and I recognize that, because I have the honor and privilege to also train with professionals, not just citizens. And so I was more, that question came across very naive. So I want to backpedal a little bit and be defensive here, in the sense of just being emotional, being a dad, and being super close to one of these guys going,
no, man, I'm with you. And you don't have to defend yourself from me. I understand exactly what you mean. And people ask me that all the time personally. And it's a prudent question. It's a smart question. So don't defend it, Tony. It's a human question.
yeah,
I guess the real answer is, I said all that to say this. At the end of the day, it's the intent to let the system handle this perpetrator so that he's investigated, he's put on trial, and he's prosecuted, and the
right,
facts are brought to bear. Because the biggest harm is that this goes silent. It gets kept secret and under the rug. And that's the only reason these scumbags are allowed to do this as much as they are, is because the public don't know that it's as big and as pervasive as it is. So I think letting the system handle them and put them away a lot of times for life, for what they've done, the harm that they've done, is really the best medicine, because it's the exposure that's so valuable.
right.
Our society needs it, man. Really do.
Yeah. What are the numbers like? Statistics, like actual and also like whatever algorithm, like, you know, they say like, hey, 1 in 10 rapes are reported, right?
Yeah.
So you can go, it's 10x what we hear. You know, what are your numbers like in this?
Well, they're saying 100,000 go missing annually in the continental United States with this. Wow. What we're learning is that the different federal agencies have been erroneously quoting each other's statistics for the last few years, and those statistics are grossly outdated in some cases. So I'm hesitant to really hang on to those stats until our team really go through that and figure out what it actually looks like. But I'll tell you what, in relation to, let's say, narcotics, annually for revenue, narcotics has been the biggest crime syndicate windfall for revenue. This has probably already exceeded it. And I say that it probably has, because they say that it's rapidly approaching the illegal narcotics trade for revenue, but it's kept so secret. And a lot of the law enforcement units that we're interviewing and working with, they don't necessarily have protocols and SOPs in place, and a big commander's intent set of orders to process the children, especially if it's a foreign child. You know, there's a language problem. It's very tricky for law enforcement to deal with kids, to interview them, ask them, you know, the different questions. And so a lot of times they'll take, let's say it's a big truck full of dope, and there's some children stashed in there too. Well, the children are probably worth more than the dope, because of the people that sent for them are high rollers in a lot of cases. But the law enforcement aren't often are not always trained and prepared to deal with the children. So they'll just process them out and let them go back across the border. They'll process the dope. They've got standards for that, and they're used to doing that. But the children are tricky, so that doesn't go reported. And even though they say it's just about to surpass it, I believe that it already has, and that it's so big and there's so much money moving that they've just kept it all quiet because there's too many people in the take.
And your focus is U.S. I mean, this is an international thing. I've got friends who are doing missions overseas and like very similar things. Like this is huge worldwide.
Yes, it is very much a global problem, but because I've spent so much of my life, 55 countries running special operations, high threat and low threat, and every other type, I've decided that I'm going to focus here in my own country,
Right.
our own children. Not somebody else's problem, not somebody else's kids, ours. And I'll tell you what, I understand why other people do it internationally and not here in the States, because it's harder to do it here and to rescue our own kids. There are a lot of legal roadblocks and obstacles to keep us from helping. And a lot of it's due to corruption, and the rest of it's bureaucracy and CYA by the politicians and other bureaucrats that want to make it difficult to mitigate any sort of liability. But man, we've got to do this. We've figured out ways to get around it. My team was some very intelligent senior officials that are finding ways to get around these obstacles. But it's weird.
To help our listeners understand this, and a lot of the people listening to this are in the emergency services, military, law enforcement, first responders, so they understand the bureaucracy and the politics, stuff like this. But I want, like everyone else in the audience, just to understand this, and then Craig, jump in if you want to share any examples of this. But after, I believe it was Sandy Hook, the shooting at Sandy Hook, I went over. My youngest daughter, her school is about a mile away, and pretty unprotected, open campus. And I went in there on the Monday. The shooting was on a Friday, and I went in on there Monday and sat down with the principal and said, "Hey, I don't want any money from you guys. This is what I do. These are some of the units I work with. Here's letters I've gotten from, DOD and SWAT and military, all this shit. Just so you know that I'm like not some nutcase. This is legit. I do not want any money, but your teachers and your staff are my kids' bodyguards. And I want to teach you like just how to think and what to do, how to manage your fear, and then how to move and what to do." And they weren't even interested in a talk or a demo. She pointed to her phone on her desk and said, "We have an app. If something happens, we have an app that calls the police." And I looked at her and I said, "Hello, you'd like this is over before you even hit the last one on 911, And she just looked at me, and I handed her, my little portfolio, and I said, "The offer's here. Like, please read this over and let me know." And I pushed a little bit, and she said, "Well, I'd have to speak to the county supervisor," and she just explained this like bureaucratic bullshit fucking, where she was actually so powerless and helpless to make a decision on her own. And the bottom line is that nothing ever happened. I never even got a thank you email. It just disappeared into the bureaucracy of no one can make a decision, and no one wants to use the acronym CYA. Nobody wanted to. It was like, well, what if we do this? What's our liability? What's our exposure? Let's just let insurance take care of this if something happens. So
that happens, Tony, by my observation in different parts of the civilian society and the government, by, again, bureaucrats creating more and more rules and regulations and restrictions to cover their personal backside. Yeah. And it gets more and more restrictive until the good person, the rank and file, they're powerless because the regs or the rules prevent them from it because their boss was too chicken to allow them the freedom to make a heads up decision and save the day. We've got to clean some of that up nationally. A friend of mine that used to work for me in the Air Marshal service, I used to have 210 agents work for me there in Las Vegas in the Air Marshal service. He went on to become the head of the protocols for oh man, why can't I say it right now? Active shooter
Mm.
standards federally. And he and I started to create a company to go around teaching some of these schools how to harden themselves against these. But it was an uphill battle. We were running a lot of the same things. I got busy with other things, and some of my friends are running some of those companies now. But yeah, there's there's a wide spectrum of protection in the school. Some are pretty diligent and their hearts are really good. Others are just completely still wide open and not inclined to do much. It's interesting, man. I'd like to see us tighten that up before something unthinkable happens.
Yeah. Again, the like this recent event in Florida, just exposed all of the corruption, poor training, mindset, tactics. I mean, you can second guess and do this and do that. At the end of the day, when people are being murdered feet away from you and you have a fucking gun, like you go, hey, well, I'm going to ask for, forgiveness, not permission. I don't care what the fucking SOP is. We got to go. And it looks like you want to add something to that. Go for it.
Well, it's we're the basis of our discussion today is fear and how we handle it, Tony. One of the things that I jotted down as a note, the difference between physical courage and moral courage. And that's something I've learned more in my later years, and having stood up for what was right and seen a lot of guys that were quite the badass physically were terrified to stand up morally for what was right. And I see it to this day. There are people that will not get online and speak the truth, even though they're disgusted at what's going on, because they are terrified that someone will call them a name, or that they will lose favor with somebody out there that believes differently, somebody that maybe is not as well informed. And that's very disappointing for me to see. And I'd like to see, Americans get back to having greater moral courage and not being beat down like a sheep and made to comply and feel like they have to put their ears back and conform like a whipped puppy. What's right is right. I'm standing up for the children. It's right. There are a lot of people that don't like what I'm doing because either they don't understand it, or they're on the take, or they're complicit. They're pedophiles themselves. But man, I will not stop, because I know in my heart it's absolutely right, man. I have met so many people who have been traumatized. And talk about fear, Tony. Man, a child is not capable. Their brain is not fully developed yet. They are not capable of advocating against a predatory adult. They're just not. So a lusty pervert adult can manipulate a child and ultimately get pretty much whatever they want out of them. But the price for that child is incalculable. The harm, and I meet them, I talk to them every day now. It shatters their little psyches, man. It changes the way that they perceive things the rest of their lives. There's a trauma and a damage that happens to that little brain that's incalculable. It's ugly. It's ugly. So standing up for them is a no-brainer for me. But boy, the people sure throw rocks, and it's interesting to see that there would be so much opposition. I think it's just the crooked people, the evil people. But I said all that to say this, man. We got to stand up for what's right, and that's as big a form of courage as any.
Yeah, and I love that. I wrote some notes on my whiteboard right beside me. Just that I've always talked about courage and how contagious it is, but it was very, very elegant how you phrased it, because you can't in the real moment. And I always talk about like muscular communication, and that your quads don't go for a run. You go, I'm going for a run. And then you tell your body, you send the message, and then you go for the run. Whether you hate it or you love it is irrelevant, but nothing happens without self-awareness and then that internal communication. And there's lots of things when you're in military, you're a boxer, you're a fighter, you can be scared, but now the bell rings and you start fighting. But at that moment, there's really not a moral courage discussion. You've agreed, you've signed up. And it's interesting and great introspection on your part to have identified that this self-awareness about moral courage occurred later on in your life. And you realize, in many ways, we're just like the teacher who said no thanks had no moral courage, right? And so she's put herself and her students in danger, and that shit is also through osmosis contagious. And but it's a heavy concept, and something that I will talk to my team about discussing, because it changes how deep things go. It's like another layer, and I love it. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, brother. Look, I always say you cannot buy an honorable mirror. A lot of people out there searching for something, Tony, and they don't know what it is, and they're failing themselves by cowering in certain situations. And there's all kinds of situations that this happens in, and they can never look themselves in the mirror and really feel good. And it's in those moments that we're tested, when we stand up for what's right. It may not be easy, but man, you feel it inside when you've done something good. It might be expensive for you. You might get punched, you might get fired, you might, there can be some immediate pains from doing what's right, but deep down inside, man, it's priceless. You cannot buy that. And for the rest of your life, man, you won't have to be ashamed. I kind of figured that out early on, watching my father as a spiritual and really strong man morally, and watching him live his life with no compromise. It was an eye opener. And I went more the physical route. I had a brother that was 5 years older than me, and the southpaw. He's 6'3", and he beat me until I got sick of being beat. And he did it with love, the way big brothers beat you,
right?
With love. But nobody else is going to do that. So I found my physical courage early on. And there was one young man that grabbed the back of my bike. I was probably maybe 8 years old or something. He grabbed the back of my bike when I was leaving a little store, and he tried to stop me I think he wanted to beat me up. And I tried riding away to get away from him. And because I wasn't in the mood to fight. I didn't have any problem with this guy, but he was just being a punk. And I finally got away from him, and I never felt good about it. And another guy beat him, like a year later, beat the guy so badly that the dude ended up spitting his braces out. And I remember thinking at the time, you know what, I should have done that. That guy's not nearly as big or as talented a fighter as my big brother is, not even close. I could have throttled him, I could have wrecked him, and I would have felt a lot better about myself. So I figured those things out earlier on, but that's the physical part. But the moral courage, just standing up for what's right, man, I've kind of figured that out through trial and error throughout my life. And I think it's really empowering, man. My perspective, I guess, has changed in that way over the years. I've broken a lot of helmets and stopped a lot of punches, Tony. And so I'd like to have some of those brain cells back, man, but I have figured some things out, right? And I have learned some lessons even still. And that's you can't buy an honorable mirror, and you find yourself when you stand up for the right thing, and you do that good thing no matter what it costs you.
I love that, man. I dig that, because I turned 58 a couple of weeks ago, and my body feels 60, my brain's 28, but I'm thinking, man, I have been like busting my ass for decades now, and I look at some of the trials and tribulations and hurdles, and they were always, when I look back, about integrity and moral courage, not selling out, not kissing someone's ass, not just getting in line because that's what convention says or society says or what have you. It starts going back to, when I got custody of my son when he was a month old,
Oh,
right?
wow.
He's 26 now. I mean, 26 years ago, dads didn't get their kids when a relationship split up. And I get, and I remember my mom saying,
But you did.
yeah, and but my mom's saying, look, here's what you do is you'll do what every other like divorced single dad does. You'll see your kid every 2 weeks on the weekend. I said, no, I'm not doing that. Right. And all the way like business shit like that, man, this is a great conversation for me because it's really, because I was just last night, driving with one of my team and just talking about like a look back, the journey that we've had, the successes we've had. And I think about like these hurdles and obstacles, they were always around the integrity and the fuel and the mindset you need to always, I always make this joke, like integrity is for sale. It's $1 more than you're paying somebody for most people, right? Like, you go, holy fuck, I thought that guy was in for sure. And it's like, no, he's working over here now. He's doing that. And he's, and my integrity's never been for sale. It's just what it is. And some people have, and this is a question I'll throw back at you because especially, all society has always preached moral courage, maybe not as eloquently as you phrased it or even using that language, but we've always had, you got to do the right thing, be true unto yourself, all that stuff. And in the military, it's like the right thing for the right reason for the right people. But then everyone, the experience is completely different. Why aren't we doing this? Well, because I said so. That was the order. Right. And your parents teach you that, and your school teachers teach you that. When we do our seminars, I always tell people, hey, there's no such thing as a stupid question. What's stupid is not asking a question. And, I'll do this little sermon in the beginning of the class. And let's say there's 20, 30 people in the class. I'll go, does anyone have any questions? And no one ever asks a question. But on our break, people come up to you. And so when that happens, I stop everyone. I go, look at this. There's like a line up here to ask me questions on a break. But I asked you a minute ago, did you have any questions? We've been taught as kids not to ask questions, right? Not to think for ourselves. This all, I don't know, I'm rambling right here, but this all ties into the moral courage of to say, I don't understand what you're saying. Well, you're not paying attention. You're not listening, little Johnny.
They don't want to be embarrassed.
Yeah. And so what happens is we end up choosing silence and then just like imitation instead of education. But any words of wisdoms or thought on how people know what you brought this up earlier, people know what's right. And then their inability to manage their fear like makes them turn the blind eye to what should be done.
Yeah. Well, I'd say maybe baby steps. If you tell people they have to be a saint, they'll never take that first step. I'm certainly no saint. I'm not perfect. I'm as screwed up as anybody, but I've found through trial and error that I feel better, man, when I make that hard decision. And now that hard decision's easy. It's natural for me. People want me to sell out for something I don't believe in. The answer's no. But you don't understand how much money. And I'll tell them, yeah, I do understand. And I need the money and I'm not going to take it. And here's why. And they just kind of cock their heads because our society is weak now. There aren't enough people living a straight and honorable life. So I would encourage people, just try it. Just try a little bit. And just see if you don't feel so much better inside and you realize that you can't buy that. A new Ferrari is going to make you smile once in a while when you rev that engine and you drive around the block, but it's not going to fill that hole. We start doing something that matters, you feel it inside, and it's worth more than anything. I tell my kids, the best things in life are not things. It's relationships, and you build relationships by creating value in yourself. I mean, if your friends know that they can count on you, well, why can they count on you? It's because you've built some integrity, you've built some reliability by keeping your word and putting out a little bit of effort. And when later people give you credit for that, man, that feels good. You can't buy that. You have to build it. You have to earn it. And once people, I think, figure that out, they'll really enjoy it. They'll never go back, and they'll grow and grow and grow.
This is good, man. This is really, it's funny because as most people probably do, we make our impressions based on Instagram and Facebook, right? And so you're like this big ass fucking badass, right? But you're a deep philosopher, and it's refreshing, and it's
don't
really
tell
cool.
anybody, Tony. You'll
I
ruin
know.
the tough guy reputation.
We gotta edit this part out, so this is awesome stuff, and it's truly like the Renaissance warrior, like the stuff that I fell in love with when I started studying martial arts and combatives and stuff like that and that's also that moral courage too, is like I don't need to fight now. I could fight, but I don't need to. I'm going to walk away from this, or I'm going to verbally defuse and de-escalate this. Okay, now I need to fight, and now that's just a mechanical switch. And I've always told people, like, it's easy to hit somebody. It's way harder and takes a lot more internal communication and courage to do the moral and ethical thing as well. It's funny when we started talking and you talked about the TV show and a Netflix special. My initial reaction was like, a TV show on this, like, okay, but like listening to your story and your philosophy, and connecting it to all of this, that could be amazing if. And I don't know, you never know how people edit and cut it, or if it's just completely like raw and live. Because, I've worked on some film or TV or interview where, like someone will ask me a question and I'll give this like really good answer, and then they use the last sentence and it's totally out of context. And you're like, fuck, I sounded like an asshole there. Is what is going to be shared, does it convey some of this perspective? Because this is as important as the rescuing of the kids and exposing it, but the whole moral courage part does that come out at all in any interviews or any talks?
Man, that is the only thing we're trying to do. I interviewed a lot of the production companies and producers, Tony, who work in the high threat realm of documentary film production. And the guy inevitably on the telecons ended up being a friend of mine, who he's also a producer, and he creates supercomputers and CGI and virtual reality technology. And he's part of a think tank, and he's a world-class storyteller, but his name is relatively unknown. But he kept having the best solutions whenever these big producers would run dry in the conversation. As far as finding solutions, he would offer something and they would be like, man, who's that? That's fantastic. That's actually a very beautiful and powerful solution, a way to reach people and show them what's going on. So everybody on this production are people that I hand chose because their hearts are in it. And
nice.
They are from among the most talented and professional out there. They work on a lot of the biggest feature films out there. But, let's face it, Hollywood's full of a lot of people with empty souls, but there are a lot of good people out there too. So I've chosen the ones that really have their hearts in it, and we're going around and we're telling the real deal. There's no punches pulled. I'm trying to tell my guy, hey, please don't show when my gut's sticking out. That's really embarrassing for me. And he's like, sorry, man. If it's a real moment, it's going in. So
right.
I don't even have that level of control of this thing, but it's genuine, and we've got so many surviving victims, witnesses, law enforcement that have worked the cases, experts. We've got people that have gone undercover. Like, just as an example, Bob Hamer is a friend of mine. He's right there in San Diego, Tony. He was in the FBI. He went undercover in NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association, pedophiles. Jeez. He went undercover, and he was a Marine, a Christian, family man, married, heterosexual, hard charging, FBI agent. They were using him to go undercover in all kinds of hardcore crime syndicates, mafia and all that kind of stuff. And then they tasked him to go inside of NAMBLA undercover. And he's like, no, not me. Choose someone else. They're like, no, we need you to do this. And so he made himself do it. He got 8 major convictions within the top officials of NAMBLA. So he's got some fascinating stuff to share, as do all of the people that we've chosen to interview for this. So it's like that. I mean, it's the real deal. People that have lived it. We had a child trafficking victim that we were able to extract and recover on Easter Sunday. Talk about hit you right in the heart, right in the feels, man. This changed all of our lives. It was beautiful.
Amazing.
We interview her and talk about, what she's been through, and she shares quite a bit. And we've got a lot of other surviving victims as well. But yeah, it's where the American public are going to see what the mainstream news media will not cover and inform them of. Knowledge is power. We can't fight what we don't know as a society, and that's why my mission is to blow the cover of this crime syndicate and this trafficking of our children here in the country, so that we can all rise up against it as a nation. That's what's got to happen.
It's insane. It's very inspiring. I hope it inspires people too, because there's so many battles, right? Like this is just one. Fake news, all the other like shit. Like there's all these like corrupt, communities, for lack of a better word, that have just lost all moral compass, and it's insane.
You're right. And as a fighter, you understand combat. The inherent nature of human combat. Imagine what better way to destroy the future of a nation than to shatter the minds of their entire next generation by trafficking and raping those children and ruining their little psyches. They never, a lot of them never fully recover. It's lifelong trauma. So what's going on is incalculable harms. I mean, I got to do it.
It's amazing. Is this going to be a like a feature or a series?
It'll be a 2-hour feature film documentary for Netflix, original content. So we should hit 120 million Americans with this winter.
Man,
and I think we'll have the ability to follow on with a series afterward. We're running the sting operations. One of the things that I want to do is take our proven model of operations and replicate that nationally. Teach a lot of federal, local law enforcement units how we do this.
Right.
Train their lead agents on it so that they can coordinate and start doing this everywhere. So it's just a matter of multiplying.
I love it. One of the things, in this happened about a year or two ago, when when I really started thinking about, what when you peel the onion under everyone's decision to do or to not do something, I realized it just came down to their relationship with fear. And that's what spawned the whole No Fear podcast and all of that. And, it wasn't something new. The acronym, not the acronym, but the word, the play on words, No Fear, because, everyone's familiar with the No Fear t-shirt company, the adrenaline stuff. And I always make this joke, like, I grew up afraid of everything, afraid to compete, afraid to win, afraid to lose. And so ultimately that mindset would sabotage if I was in gymnastics or wrestling or skiing and all the sports I competed in. We started using this in the early 80s as a reframe where, it was around the same time as the No Fear company. We would write No Fear on the board. And we go, how many of you would like to have no fear? Everyone puts their hand up. And I go, like, anyone ever achieve that? Because there's always like something new in your life where you go, here we go. And it's an interesting thing for me where, like I said, if we can change our relationship to fear, we change ultimately how we self-actualize, who we become. And one of the things, you made me just think about a conversation I had last year, and where I said, if we could teach, instead of calculus to kids, teach them how to look at fear, how to talk about fear. And because it's not, when you understand that in yourself, you become your coach, you become that whole moral compass, the ethical compass, the doing the right thing. If we said, well, why didn't that, like, you give examples like people covering your ass, that's fear, right? I'm afraid to get fired. I'm afraid to get punched in the face, whatever it is. And I said in some talk last year, I said, if we could teach children how to look at fear and manage fear and use fear, but not give them this false notion that when you're good, you don't have fear. It's just you learn how to make a decision. You use it as a fuel as opposed to having it like just suppress, your creativity or your movement. And I said it would just change their lives. And you just triggered that again when you said like the way to crush your nation is to destroy the children, and like the mainstream media combined like with this, and you remember the whole Me Too movement and all that, where how many people in politics and in Hollywood are connected to what you're doing, right? So like that's a tricky thing where like, hey, why did this get shut down, or how come we didn't get here? And it blows my mind the level of corruption there is around the world.
Yeah. It's discouraging, but it's also a motivator. I can't abide a future for my kids that's dominated by people like that. Just
right.
Can't do it. That fighter in me that's like, no, if nobody else is going to stand up, you clowns, I will. I've been abraded and abused enough to where I'm over it. I don't need comfort so desperately that I'm willing to feel like I'm living my life in cowardice by turning away from that which is obviously so hostile and harmful. So look, you hit on something earlier, man, that I want to go back to, and fear is a tool. It's a useful reminder so we don't get ourselves foolishly killed or maimed, right? Sometimes,
right.
But it's also a thief. Fear is a thief, and I put something in an article that I wrote that a couple people quoted on this morning, and so I posted it back up, and it is: fear is the most crippling obstacle preventing people from achieving their dreams. And I've seen that time and time again. People don't even take that first step for something that they want. They may have a passion for something, Tony. I don't care what it is. We're all different. And they don't get started because they're paralyzed by fear. I've trained my own children to do different things, to climb, to swim, to ride their bikes. And I think it's useful for the purpose of this discussion to share the differences. My daughter did not necessarily have her own, she did not need to be in control. She would trust me, and that was enough for her. So I could hold her as a little baby by her belly in the pool and let her float and tell her, swim like this with your hands and kick your little feet, precious. Papa's got you. And she would look at me once. You got me? Yeah, Papa's got you. That was enough for her. So she would do what I said. And she would begin swimming instantly. She began climbing instantly. She would jump off of things to me. I pushed her down the street once on her bicycle, and she rode away because Papa's got you was all she needed. The fear was gone. Okay, Papa's got me. That was good enough. My boy, he's tough, talented athlete, brave kid, but Papa's got you didn't mean anything to him. He's wired differently. He was reliant upon his own strength. And so when I put him in the pool, Papa's got you meant nothing. So he just looked at me like, this is not going to happen. I don't feel comfortable in the water here. And I'm a little kid, and I'm not getting in there because I'll sink. And I don't know how to swim. I'm like, well, let me teach you. Nope, I'm scared. So into discussion. And I thought, wow, what a contrast and what an epiphany for people to understand I mean, look at people, how they play something on a video game where there's no physical ramification. There's no physical harm. Man, they're bold. They'll just charge right through the middle of battle or whatever, right?
Right.
Uh, and because they'll just go for it, and look how much better they can do. And I look at that in my own life. And when I've just been determined to do something that scared a lot of my peers or my colleagues, even in the SEAL teams, that where I was so determined to do it right and do well that I just focused on the task at hand, took a deep breath and just went about it and just made it happen. Man, I was like, wow, that worked out really, really well. That was clean. I had great focus. And I think if we can, and I'm sure you've shared a lot of great tools over the years on how to deal with fear. But for me, man, it's just a matter of that focus and realizing I don't want to be ashamed. I've got to make this happen. And I've stood there at the end of the diving board as a kid for 10 minutes with my dad trying to get me to jump. I've been there. I mean, we're human, right? I've
Right.
overcome things at a young age and got to where I overcame them one at a time, and it just felt great. And I want that for other people. So one thing that I just developed was a breathing technique, and it was from doing stress courses at the highest end of special operations, where we had some very sophisticated training, and wearing a heart rate monitor and watching what my heart rate was doing. And I learned that if I extended my and there are a few different breathing techniques that people share that work, but the one that I've developed on my own is simply to extend my exhale. Once I'm at the bottom of my exhale and it's natural to begin inhaling again, I continue exhaling. And at that point, from there on, I can see my heart rate drop much more rapidly than any other time. And what that does is return blood flow to the outer cortex, frontal lobe. You make better decisions. You feel more calm. Your body oxygenates itself actually better under stress when you do that. So that's something that I just figured out through trial and error, man. Wearing a heart rate monitor, trying to get my body in better physical condition, because I bonked on a race at the SEAL team I was on. I was in great shape, but I hit the wall. I physically bonked, and a buddy of mine that used to run the best ranger competitions and do back-to-back Ironmans in a day. He's a fantastic world-class athlete. And I asked him to articulate to me exactly what happened when I bonked. I'm like, man, I feel like an invisible giant just injected me full of super glue. What happened? He goes, well, here's what happened. You ran through your quick burn fuels, and your heart rate went up when you started accelerating your run, and that's what happened. You ran out of quick burn fuels. Your body shut you down as a defense mechanism. And so through that, I learned, he made me start wearing a heart rate monitor, and I started learning and playing with it. So extending that exhale, man, that returned my clarity of thought, made me calmer, made me a better problem solver under adverse conditions, less fearful. Fantastic tool. I would encourage anybody to take that on board and try it.
Yeah, there's a big push and movement through the world now about understanding breathing. I mean, a lot of us, most of us take breathing for granted, right? Because if you stop breathing, everything stops. And it never even occurred to me. I developed good breath control just because I was so athletic and so physical, but I recently, like last year, I really started to think about the idea of breathing deliberately, and playing around with these apnea apps and on, different breathing styles. And I don't know if you know, a good friend of mine, Brian McKenzie, started this seminar called Art of Breath, doing all this research and all these different protocols. And that's one of the big things is the exhale. And when you do your exhale and you hold it, is it intuitive how long you hold it for, or is there?
I don't hold it. I just continue exhaling past
Right.
the point where I should be breathing back in, where I would naturally begin breathing back in.
Okay.
I just continue forcing out that exhale, and I try to make that last as long as I can, depending on the situation. Sometimes when you're in a fight, you can't really do that.
Right.
But if you're about to make a speech, or if you're going to go on national television, which I've done a lot of times for every major network and all that, or a lot of situations that allow you a little bit of a physical pause, I'll just continue that exhale and make it last longer before I breathe back in. And that really drops the heart rate. You can watch it on a monitor decrease much more rapidly than any other part in that breathing cycle.
That's
Play
interesting.
with that. Let me know what you think personally.
Yeah. So listen, this call was way deeper than I anticipated, and that's not meant to be an insult to either one of us. Like I said, I've been a fan of yours, from the online. Oh, check this out. Look at this. Like, oh, here's a new gun. Oh, no, he's rescuing kids. Oh, he's in a movie. This is and it was just get on a call and talk. I did not expect. I made a bunch of notes here for myself, which is so cool. Things that I want to share with my kids, which is even cooler. And I'm super. My brain is really not like I don't have enough on my plate. Is to try and learn more about your current mission and see if there's any ways that we can help and get involved, other than, of course, sharing this podcast and getting people like really aware of this. And I know one thing I wanted to ask you, about the kids and all this stuff. Are there what can a citizen do to help you guys, and B, are there, like, we always talk about, pre-contact indicators and stuff like that. Are there things that you've noticed that someone go, oh, that is happening there, I should report that? It's like pre-contact cue.
Absolutely. Well, they can go first to vetsforchildrescue.org is our website. There's a lot of information there, and there are tabs for people to volunteer and enter their information. There's people all over the world volunteering to help with us, investigators and all kinds of very talented people. We appreciate that. There's something that every one of us citizens can do. One is to, of course, it's a nonprofit organization, so we're running all of these operations, making these arrests and rescues with small private donations to the nonprofit org. So we're grateful for that. That's the only thing that's allowed us to get this done. And I think the big donors, the big billionaires, once they see the documentary come out, they'll probably get it, and we can really hit the afterburners and multiply the numbers of what we're achieving. But what we're doing already is unheard of with what we've got. It's very encouraging, and I'm grateful for it. But the average citizen, man, if they know any law enforcement, it's imperative for us that the district attorney, chief of police, or sheriff really have the intent to address this in their town or city, because not all of them do.
Right.
Sadly, we've been working with so many of the most amazing and patriotic and good ones, district attorneys, chiefs of police, sheriffs, and their whole teams. It's been inspiring and fantastic. But some of them we've called to coordinate with, Tony, sadly have said, yeah, we understand that there's a serious problem in this city with child trafficking, but we don't want our citizens to know about it, so we're not going to run the operations and highlight it.
Wow.
And we just can't believe that's an acceptable answer. So my determination as the commander, if you will, of Veterans for Child Rescue, the founder and president, my commander's intent is what gets carried out. And my decision is that we highlight the heroes who are doing their best and have agreed to address this and have helped us arrest dozens of these predators now and take them off of the streets with meaningful prosecutions. And every one of these child predators, they're saying the average is about 70 children each whose lives that they negatively harm, that they destroy a lot of these lives. A lot of these kids kill themselves, and there's a lot of damage that is done even if they survive it. But the ones that have really stepped up and done the good work and coordinated with, it's been so beautiful. So I'm going to highlight them and hold them up as exemplars. And we should all celebrate them as a nation and recognize them, because they're doing it because they want to. And it is beautiful. So I think as other people are motivated and inspired by their leadership, their example, it will be infectious and it will grow, and people will want to be more like them, because they should. And so that's another thing they could do, is connect us to good and strong leaders like that in their community. And then they can hound their elected officials for stronger enforcement. We've got the laws on the books we need to put this to bed, but there's not necessarily the will to enforce it, the political will. So I think it's a political thing in a lot of cases, Tony. So hound our political officials, man. Hey, get on this. Let's enforce the law. We need the contacts and the support from all directions. There's no such thing as too big and too much support for what we're doing. Until this thing is completely won, I'll never stop. So we appreciate everything anybody can do. And pre-attack indicators, you mentioned that, so not to cut short. One of the things that we're learning is a lot of these predators put themselves in positions to have access to the kids. So sadly, they become Little League coaches. They become school teachers. They become scout leaders and principals and everything else, church members. So they have access to the children, and then they do the harm there. So I would say, please look after your children. It pains me to say be suspicious of good people that are supposed to be pillars of our society, but trust but verify. Maybe just that's a good way to put it. Trust people but verify. Don't leave your child alone with somebody if you can at all help it. Try to plan around that. Provide scrutiny, because that's the safety net for your kid. It's happening a lot more than any of us would dare to fear, and we gotta put a stop to that, and that's how.
It's fucking heavy, man. It's the cliche, when they arrest the serial killer that lived next door, there's always three neighbors that said he seemed like such a nice guy, right? There's that facade, and this comes into we're coming out of an era, an era, and that was a Freudian slip, an error and an era of an administration where you're scared to put your hand up and report something. But this comes back to something you brought up, rightly so, is moral courage. Like, I talk about, the three I's: instincts and intuition and intelligence. And if you got a bad feeling about something and something feels off, and those are your instincts and intuition creating that dissonance, the intelligent thing to do is pursue that, shine a spotlight on it. If someone comes up to me and says, "You're a fucking thief," I'm not going to, it's like, my reaction to that is going to be, "What are you talking about, man?" Like, if I'm innocent, there's going to be a behavioral response that's congruent with this disconnect. And I'm also not going to start stealing things because you called me a thief. Well, if you think I'm a thief, I'm like, it's so stupid. And so I guess, this little rant is about, like, if you think something is, you got this real serious gut, you do a little, and you report it, or you discuss it, or you address it. Like, if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, you're offering these private self-defense lessons. I just need to know if you're a pedophile." Like, if a parent ever said that to me, I wouldn't turn beet red. I wouldn't get weird. I'd go, "Holy fuck, really?" Like, and we'd have a conversation, and I'd look at them and I go, and it's funny. I read something in one of Gavin Becker's books years ago about interviewing babysitters for your kids. And we were, my wife and I were interviewing, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to ask like these questions here at the back of Gavin's book." And it was like, one of the questions is like, like a question, if the kid is screaming or this or that, like, would you ever hit a kid? Have you ever hit a kid? And my wife, like, "God, you can't ask that. That's so embarrassing." I said, "No, I'm going to ask it." Like, and it was funny. Like, here's this woman. She's amazing. My wife's like loving her, like doing this, and my heart's pounding because it's the end of the interview, and she's really sold herself to us. And I go, "So, like, and we're holding hands, and we really needed somebody to help us. We had 3 kids at this point, and Jesse's looking over at me going, "Oh, she's perfect." And I said, "So I got one question. Last question is, have you ever, working for any other families, ever abused or hit the kids, when parents weren't around or anything like that?" And she paused and went, "Oh my God, no." But there was like something off. There was some weird delay, and she left. And it was convincing enough that we weren't sure, but in retrospect, there was this weird delay. So when we called her to say, hey, we'd like to see you again, like she never answered, she never came back. Like that was it, right?
You touched on something. Yeah, man.
Right.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was like I got goosebumps right now. My adrenaline's going right now, just reliving that. But it was like that moment of of managing your fear, moral courage. Like if somebody asked me, have you ever abused a kid like this? Like my eyes would open, like, holy shit, where did you get that from? And I don't know if this is making any sense. I'm trying to inspire people that, like, if you ask somebody the truth about something, you should be able to. There might be some awkwardness, but the truth is the truth.
Well, that's leadership, Tony. A leader's primary function is to motivate. So you say you want to inspire people. That's leadership, and I think we've got kind of a turnaround happening nationally right now. And decades past, people did not feel like they were welcome to stand up to some sort of perversion or obvious wrongdoing or something harmful, because they were demoralized, they were beat down. And now I think people are starting to be encouraged and realize we can kind of speak the truth now. We should stand up and say, no, pedophilia is not just a sexual preference. It's an attack. It's rape because the child cannot advocate for themselves, and
Right.
it's not okay. And we must be encouraged to stand up and say it on behalf of the kids. And I think nationally, there can be a leadership and an encouragement of the people and the society, the culture, to stand up to that which is so obviously harmful, rather than being beat down and demoralized anymore. So that's a beautiful thing. That's part of the healing and the correction process of our country. So no, I think you hit on something important there. It's leadership, and we want people to be inspired and encouraged to stand up and make a difference. There's nothing better.
Well, I can't wait to get this podcast out and kind of check out the pulse on the response, because it's one of those things where everyone's got that skeleton in the closet, that person in the family, the person they know. You read whether, like you brought up, somebody in a religious community, this wrestling coach, this karate instructor, this, like, the stories are insane. It's a lot. The frequency of this and the characters, it's mind-boggling, and I don't, there's a part of me that goes, holy shit, I don't even want to know, but we need to know, and we need to. It's an amazing mission. It's an amazing mission. What else? Let's wrap this up, and I'd like to do, like, once the Netflix comes out, get back on, do another talk, take it to the next level. But anything that you want to share or leave with the guests, we got the website. Anything other new and exciting? I mean, like, there's so many things that you're involved with, but like, this topic was so so tight and so focused. I don't know if we want to go off on another tangent.
I'll sign off real quick by saying one thing. Another passion of mine is making life safer and more effective for our warfighters. That's my heritage. That's been my life, my brotherhood in the SEAL teams, and as a spec ops sniper. And I ran around carrying multiple weapons on missions sometimes, and extreme amounts of weight. And so what I've done is I've created, we're building it right now. I've worked on it for about 6 years with different companies, but I've finally got the right engineers who can build my vision and do it right. The lightest, shortest, most reliable, and most versatile combat warfighter rifle ever built. And it's exciting to be part of. I can't wait till it hits the market, and I can't wait till my brothers run around on operations with an inherently better weapon system and tell me, my gosh, Sawman, this changes everything. This is a game changer. So I'm excited about that. That's coming. I can't describe too much about it because there are too many thieves in the biz, but it's exciting. So that's another positive thing, that I'm working on. That's a commercial venture. The thing for the children, that's nonprofit. We're all doing that lean. We're doing a lot with a little there, and that's just the right thing to do. But the commercially, the rifle project's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we'll cover that in another episode.
Yes, sir.
Craig, this was so deep and so good, and I'm not going to wish you luck with what you're doing, because it's not about luck. It's like you said, it's the moral courage to do the right thing, and we're whatever we can do on my side. I mean, you sounds like you got the A team all squared away, but we've got affiliates and trainers all over the world, and they'll all listen to this. But if there's any other way we can get involved, just hit me up.
Yeah, man. Well, there's a lot for plenty of people, plenty of good people to pitch in on. So, man, there's the doors are definitely not closed, Tony. So we'll pursue that, brother.
Okay, be safe. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thanks for having me on.